Are 70% of divorces filed by women? That stat has been everywhere recently. I've seen it on TikTok, I've seen it in news articles, it's on divorce lawyers' blogs. But is it fact or fiction? Welcome to Is This Legit? Research Reality Check with your host, me, Dr. Kirsten Lee Hill. Let's dig into the 70% stat and see if it's for real. The AI overview on Google will tell you that this stat comes from a study by the American Sociological Association. So while viral videos aren't there citing sources one day, most of the articles do link back to the same post by the American Sociological Association. It is not a study that they did. It's, let's say, more like a blog post that they wrote, sharing about a presentation that was going to be upcoming at their 110th annual meeting. And what's interesting about this post by the American Sociological Association is that you immediately see this little shift in language, right? Because first you hear the stat is 70% of women are filing for divorce, but then you go to this article and you see that it actually says women are more likely than men to initiate divorce, not file, initiate. Now, if that seems silly or like unimportant to you, stop, because this language is actually super important. If you only take away one thing from today's episode, let it be this: language matters. And especially when you're reporting research, facts, stats, whatever, you want to be super precise with your language. The good news is that the study cited is real, so let's just go straight to the source. The study was collected by a researcher named Michael Rosenfeld, and he is an associate professor of sociology at Stanford University. And you can read about this study in an article that's called Who Wants the Breakup? Gender and Breakup in Heterosexual Couples. Let's talk about this 70% filing issue using the same framework that I always use, the 5 W's. Why? So, the author of the study wanted to understand whether the gender dynamics of who wants a breakup differ between married and unmarried couples. And what they say in the beginning of their article is that it is a well established fact that in heterosexual marriages, most divorces are wanted by the wife. So the study is saying, like, okay, if it's true that in a heterosexual marriage, most divorces are wanted by the wife, is that pattern still true for unmarried couples that are breaking up? Is it most likely the woman who wants the breakup? They designed a study to find out. When the results of this study were published in 2015 by the American Sociological Association in their little blog post, if you download the paper, it says 2017 as a date. And it also talks about a book publishing these results as 2018. So, like, let's just call it 2017. That's the date on the paper. I like that. And the data is collected between 2009 and 2015. So, again, just as context, not knocking the study for this, just context, this data is about 10 to 15 years old. Who and where? The people involved in this study are a nationally representative sample of 2,538 adults. And these are adults who have to have a partner of a different gender, right? So it has to be a man dating a woman, married to a woman, or a woman dating married to a man. The ages range from 19 to 94. And that's really all we get about the people in the study. And I just want to note here that I really hate when people say a study is nationally representative, but then they don't go on to discuss what attributes that's considering, right? Like, is it nationally representative in terms of race, ethnicity, in terms of education level, in terms of income, in terms of gender? Obviously, it's not in terms of sexual orientation, right? So I would really love for this study and for all studies to see a descriptive table, a table that describes the people who are in the study, right? That just gives us all the details about them, because that information about who this data came from can really make a difference in how you interpret the results of the study. Sadly, I don't see that for this study, and that's just it's a bummer. It's frustrating. So please, if you're doing a study out there, tell us about the people in it. People were recruited into this study through random digit dialing. Yes, that is the kind where you would answer an unknown number on your phone and then proceed to take a survey with the stranger who is calling you. Let's be real, y'all. That's already got a limit who's participating, because it is a special type of person who picks up unknown numbers. I'm just saying. That's interesting to me, right? As a millennial who screens all of her calls, random digit dialing. Whew, it's not as popular as it used to be, but there are still a bunch of people collecting data out there that way. And I just wonder how it shapes the data they get. Now, by the end of the study in 2015, they were looking at 371 breakups. And of those, there were 92 marriage breakups. So this stat, on like the 70% of divorces, is coming from these 92 marriage breakups. On to the what. So the data came from the How Couples Meet and Stay Together survey. So to get to this 69, which people rounded up to 70, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. To get to this 70% stat, people were asked first to report if they had a breakup. Then they were asked, between you and insert your partner's name, who wanted the divorce / separation / breakup more. And they were given these following options to choose from. They could say, I wanted the divorce / separation / breakup more. The name of my partner wanted the divorce / separation / breakup more. Or we both equally wanted the divorce, separation, breakup. So of these 92 divorces that are reported in the study, there were 18 that were wanted more by the husband, there were 18 that were mutual, and there were 56 that were wanted more by the wife. It's saying in divorces, 70% of the time, the wife wants it more, according to wives and husbands, right? Like not just the wives saying they want it more 70% of the time, right? We looked at all of these breakups, and 70% of the time, what was reported is that the wife wanted it more. We have a survey that's measuring who wants a breakup more. We have a fact about who's initiating divorce. We have a viral stat about who's filing for divorce. Like, words matter, y'all. Who wants a breakup, who initiates it, and who files for it are completely different things. And that matters, right? Like, to me, this is misinformation. So why is this stat not getting reported as who wanted it more? These words are not interchangeable. Now, the researcher notes in their article that all of these things are basically the same according to research. If you look at court records, it matches up with who says they want it more, which matches up with who initiates it. So they're saying, like, you know what, whether you measure who wants it more or actually look at court records, like, you see the same thing. Things like that make me a little nervous, just because, again, that is not what this study found, right? That's like taking what this study found and comparing it to what other studies found, but then using the stat from this study to represent a bunch of other studies. And like, personally, I'm not comfortable with that. I think that there needs to be much more specificity in interpreting the data. That stat is based on self-reported data from 92 divorces in a survey conducted 10 to 15 years ago. It's not about filing, it's not about initiating, it's about wanting more. So this study does not measure who filed for divorce, which is an objective fact. You could go to the court documents and look up who's filing. And it also doesn't measure who initiated the breakup. Initiated is such an ambiguous term. Like, I couldn't even begin to define that in this case. Like, what does it mean to initiate the divorce? Is it like if I'm asking you to have the conversation about it? If it's that I'm like withdrawing and acting in a way that brings it on, right? Like, what does it mean to initiate? Doesn't matter. So far, how we've seen the stat reported, it is as filing for divorce and initiating divorce, not as wanting divorce more, which is what the study is actually measuring. This is self-report data. Common criticism of survey data is that, like, you're asking people to self-report. People aren't always honest. People aren't always self-aware, right? So self-report data already loses some credibility because of concerns about people not really knowing themselves or really grasping reality, right? It's subjective. Like, who wanted it more? You're not asking like both people in the couple, right? You're not asking the husband and the wife who wanted it more and comparing their answers, right? Like, you're asking a wife to reflect on her marriage and, you know, other wives and other husbands, but it's not like a paired sample where like it's a husband and a wife and you ask them both and see if what they say is the same or different. That's not how this is set up, right? And again, like I'm hung up on the language here. Like I could want the divorce more, but not file for divorce. I could think I want the divorce more, and like my husband could say he thinks he wants it more, right? Like this is tricky data. I think this really goes to show you that when you are reporting research and facts, you have to be so careful when you choose your language to make sure that you are being true to what the study actually found. Because even the American Sociological Association, a respected research organization, is not being true to the findings when they report what the researcher found. A tiny little change from something like wanted to initiated is not a tiny little change, right? It drastically changes the meaning. And when you can see how people might leap from initiated to filed, right? Like initiating, you're starting the divorce, filing, you're starting the divorce. So like you just see it's like a game of telephone, and every time the stat gets reported, it gets a little funkier, a little further from the truth. Context matters, words matter, and as always, like sharing sources and being clear about what research actually says matters. This was a really fun one for me this week because the misinformation hinges on the data that was collected. And in this case, it was survey data, right? So the misinformation stems from the fact that a survey asked one thing, but the findings are getting reported as another thing, which just circles back to something I'm always saying: with questions you ask matter. This has been Is This Legit? With me, Dr. Kirsten Lee Hill. Remember, question everything, especially the science that makes it to your screens.